All right, you guys got my screen.
Yep.
All right. So we have chapter six, which discusses induction. So I hope everybody out there enjoys as group four takes you through chapter six. The first objective stated that we needed to examine the effects of a new teacher that they endure as he or she moves from the role of student to teacher. A lot of the things that are based on is comes from teacher prep and those kinds of things. You know, you have to take a child psychology, you have to take psychology courses, you have your methods classes, you get classes on organization, and then you take on the role of observations through like your practicum, student teaching experiences and things like that. But there's really no substitute for actually going in and doing the job. And I know we've all been there where, you know, you start out as a teacher, and it can just kind of be awkward telling a group of seniors to knock it off when you're 3 or 4 years older than them. Um, some of that vulnerability, unclear expectations. It just one of the things the text highlighted is that beginning teachers lack adaptability. Veteran teachers are better equipped to adjust to student confusion, boredom, um, whereas just a rookie teacher just sticks to the lesson plan. Experienced teachers know to be flexible and revise as things come on, and these skills just come over time. We'll talk more as we come to the following slides. Um, so, purpose of induction is meant to help beginning teachers get comfortable in their roles and skills quickly. There's lots of schools that don't offer programs or have very, very limited things. I know when I first started teaching in my very first job, I walked in, they gave me the keys and said, Good luck," and go from there." That was definitely a rough one, and it wasn't a great experience. I about quit teaching as a result. I went back and was actually a substitute then for a few years after and helped coach. And that was probably the best induction that I ever did, was going as a substitute teacher and being in lots of different classrooms and seeing how things went. Um, it just sets teachers up to be more confident. Helps, a good induction process helps teachers become participants, having an open dialogue with everyone else around them. And basically, it helps teachers' job satisfaction and feelings of success, which lead to improved retention amongst teachers. Somebody that feels appreciated, valued, comfortable in their job is definitely more likely to stick around than somebody who thinks they're out there on an island. New teacher, those formative years can be pretty intense. It's where you learn, appropriate work behavior. You're not in college anymore. You just can't show up in sweats and do your thing. You become aware of all the unwritten rules that go along in a school building. I mean, you don't sit at Becky's seat in the workroom. That's not the way it happens at lunchtime. You kind of form your identity as a teacher. You pick up more skills and tricks of the trade. And then at this point, you kind of make decisions about the future. You're kind of early into it. You're like, do I want to do this forever? Do I want to go and get my master's degree? Do I want to specialize in different areas? Do I love teaching? Do I maybe want to go a different direction with it? Um, and then you get your creation of a professional identity. You get to know the kids get to know you. You learn to teach responsibly. You're just not cookie cutter delivery. You develop some different teaching strategies, and you create your own learning community. What I really thought this one was about, like, hey, what's where the kids say, hey, I can't wait to take Mr. Drake's class, or things like that, where you really have your own kind of way of doing things, and the kids know what they're getting from you. And then the next part was learning the students, the curriculum, and the context. When it comes to dealing with students and working with students, teacher prep only does so much. You gotta go out there and do it. It's the big thing is looking at each child as an individual, understanding where they come from, knowing that everybody has a story, understanding their life experiences. The text did a good job of, pointing out that maybe you're coming from a single parent divorced household and and the kid's getting caught in transition all the time. And how do you understand that kid as compared to somebody who comes from the quote unquote model family? Um, the next part was getting familiar with the curriculum, obviously understanding your content, your assessment procedures, day-to-day classroom procedures. I thought this next part was pretty interesting. Context, what are the expectations and what are parents expecting from you? What are your administrators expecting from you? And how that might not be the same based on where you're at. Where me at tiny little Silver Lake probably has a different relationship with people and parents than people that may be in Omaha public schools. And the text highlighted that, this is where you go out and trial and error and really just kind of find your way, not being afraid to make mistakes. And it talked about survival. I mean, in those early teaching years, pushing them towards just go out there, move quickly, reestablish authority in the room, respond to the unexpected, and understand student cues and those nonverbals and how to respond to those before maybe a behavior would come along or understanding a lack of understanding. So as we move to the second objective, it talks about the types and purposes of induction programs that there are. So where it talks about the whole chapter is based on an induction, which is a planned program designed to build knowledge and skills that teachers need to work in their roles and interpersonal um, things. So there are different types of programs where you have your standard orientation programs, performance improvement programs, state mandated assistance assessment programs, and mentoring programs, which so I'll go through a few of those here. Orientation program, a lot of us have been through it, whether it be for college, jobs, whatever. It's really, really common. But as the text highlight, it has very little impact on instructional and professional commitments. Some of the things in the school we might cover in an orientation would be SPED procedures, grading policies, report cards. How do we do scheduling? How do parent-teacher conferences work? And several other things. What can happen in an orientation meeting? Well, the teachers can end up being extremely overwhelmed. They tend to be very brief and they cover a lot of information in that short period of time. The text highlighted how to make it better. Make sure you pass out a handbook with all this information in it while you're going over things. Highlight where some of these sections are. Provide valuable phone numbers and emails of people to reach out to. And then it said, just straight up ask who needs help with something. Come to us, figure out who needs that help. Even if they aren't willing, you can kind of read the room and go from there. I know our orientation's pretty rigorous where we drive them around in a van, give them the handbook and give them a tour of the district and talk about things and then go walk around with them and ask them any questions. And that's your new teacher orientation at Silver Lake.
It's similar to what we have at York too. They took all the new teachers. They took us all on tour of York. We toured the district schools too, but we took a lot of time just to get involved into the community and learn the community as well, and meet a couple of community members. It was less. They tried to do less of the, here's insurance, here's all of these different documents, and more of build relationships that first day, which I thought was a unique take on induction. and less overwhelming. It was a memorable first day too, I thought, from other past experiences that I've had with new teacher orientation.
Yep, yep. I think there's a lot of different ways going out there, but I think if you can make it a little more personal, it definitely helps and get people working together a little bit
You bet.
instead of just sitting. I know when I started here, my orientation was the high school principal at the time read the handbook to me cover to cover in front of me, and
Yeah.
that's how I learned how things work.
Yeah.
Um, Performance improvement programs. I like to I like to just call it workshops. I mean, it emphasizes instructional and classroom management strategies to both veteran and new teachers. An example of a training that they talked about in the text was like utilizing assessment data. How do we go through and do this? The big thing about it is it offers opportunity for collaboration where our veteran teachers can sit there and work with our younger teachers. They get those opportunities to interact. I mean, and an old teacher might have one perspective, a new teacher might have another, and it's just a really good opportunity. Things that make performance improvement programs successful, you just can't do it once. It's got to be intervaled throughout the school year. You got to have a set schedule of how you want to get things done and get them covered. And the thing with this is, once again, you just don't want to work in a large group in an auditorium for a day. You want to get some large group, small group, and individual instruction practice time in there. That's one of my big things is if we're going to do something, we're going to make sure that we take the time to put it into place and get feedback on it and then go from there. And then finally, the state mandated induction programs. Some states require beginning teachers to demonstrate certain competencies prior to receiving a full teaching certificate. So, how does it work? An assessment or assistance team is assigned to work with one or more beginning teachers. And so, this team usually includes a principal and a veteran teacher and a few others. And what I thought was kind of neat about it is it offers opportunities for corrective feedback and recommendations. And I mean, a principal evaluation will give you all that, but it comes from various perspectives too. It comes from your peers too, a little bit like that. So it's not basically laying down the law. It's actually an opportunity for growth in those areas. And I know different schools have similar things in place that aren't necessarily mandated, but some programs like that. And with that, I think we're on to you, Blake.
Yeah. Well, I'm Blake Mosel. I'm a teacher at York Public Schools. This is actually my first year at York. So I've lived in York for quite a while now, but have uh, taught in Sutton for the previous 4 years. So I drove back and forth, which wasn't a long drive, but a math position came open, and so I took a job here in York, which was nice, made the drive a lot shorter. But I had to take or had to be involved with a mentoring program, and this is my 14th year of education. And so when they told me you're going to have, because I have a traveling position here in New York, I traveled from the high school to the middle school. They told me you're going to have a couple of mentors. I kind of smiled and inside thought I don't really need mentors. This is my 14th year of education. I've had student teachers. I mean, I feel like I've mentored new teachers and I thought, oh, I don't really need them, but that's okay. And it was honestly really nice to have some mentors, to have some teachers to be able to go to and talk to just about uh, everyday things so that you're not taking up an administrator's time, or maybe, in some cases, you don't want to feel like you don't know that you're not impressing the administrator. So for beginning teachers, I think mentors are a great thing. Teachers respond more readily just because of accessibility, like I talked about, or they don't want those perceptions of inadequacy. Um, and that happens for veteran teachers too. Like I'm not a veteran, but I've been in the profession for a while, so I didn't want that perception from my administrators that I didn't know what was going on, because we had a different, small example. We had a different grading book where I had used Power School in the past. York used Infinite Campus, so they were just small questions that I had, and it was nice to bounce those off of my mentor teachers. Benefits include more effective instructional strategies. You can bounce off instructional strategies with your mentors. It promotes a cohesive staff. It reduces isolation, which I think is definitely huge, because in a new school district, you might not know anybody. I was lucky because I've lived here in York for a while. I've known a couple of the teachers, but if you're going to a new district, new community altogether, it's nice to have somebody that you're able to, contact or talk to, and it lowers attrition rates too, and that's one of the main things. So it reduces attrition, and it's small, but it does, versus being mentored or not mentored. So if your school district doesn't have a mentoring program, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to lose teachers by a lot, but it does reduce attrition rates if you're going to have a mentoring program. Attrition rates are high for teachers that say they receive little administration or support, which I think is obvious. My little sister and brother-in-law were in their, I believe, third year of teaching, and they both have stepped out of, it's unfortunate, both stepped out of education, and they're going to take on different jobs this next year. But that was one of their comments, was that they didn't have enough support from administration, and there's different programs that can help combat that. Mentoring programs are one of those. Administrators are asked to take on a lot of different roles, and in order to help them out, a mentoring program is definitely one of those ways that we can combat those issues. Mentoring minority teachers. So oftentimes the text said that some minority teachers were called to maybe handle different issues, for example, behavioral issues of minority children, and they didn't always appreciate that. Induction programs can include opportunities for open discussion. One of the nice things that we have at York is we have scheduled conferences with our mentors. So I think it's supposed to be every month. We had a checklist that we were supposed to go through. It may or may not have happened every month. It might have been every 2 months or so. But in those conferences, we had portions where it was open discussion, or you were allowed to, voice concerns about this or that. And that can be one of those areas where that can help alleviate those kind of issues for minority teachers. Starting a mentoring program, who mentors? You could have retired teachers. You could have current employees, which is how we do it here in New York. Sometimes that stresses out some of your employees, especially if you have a lot of new staff. So they can call on retired teachers to help out a little bit. Retired teachers don't always know the ins and outs of what's happening in the school district. So it's kind of nice to have current employees, but either one of those has seen success. How many mentors can you have? Traditionally, it was always one. So you were assigned one mentor, and they were the person that helped you out. But trends are leaning towards two or more mentors. That's what I had, and that was only because I have a traveling job. Otherwise, York sets it up for if you're in the middle school, you have a middle school mentor. If you're in the high school, you have a high school mentor. But the trending towards two now. Who participates? You could have just first year teachers. You could have new to district like I was. Um, or you could have a volunteer type of mentoring. So if you felt like you didn't need it, you could opt out. Or if you wanted to receive a mentor, you could volunteer into that. How much time? Some set minimum time requirements. Some just go as you need. Those are seen to be a little bit less successful if you're not scheduling things, if you just are assigned a mentor and there's no scheduled meeting times. So you'd like to kind of set up some times where you're required to have some sort of meeting or conference with your mentor and mentee. Otherwise, I think we all know how education can be time constraining, and that just seems like another job duty for uh, the people that are mentoring. So it's kind of nice to have a scheduled conference for them to make sure that we're helping out those new teachers or new to district educators. How much time or confidentiality or of communications. So you should definitely let your teachers know that what's being shared between the two of you is confidential, that you're not going to run and tell the principal or administrators, they're not doing this or that or the other thing. There needs to be some sort of confidentiality. Written policies. The text said it's wise to prepare a written policy statement that describes the purpose of the program, and that's just kind of protect the district and protect the mentors. Training provided, the text also said, and I can see this being true, if you're going to have some of your staff mentoring some new teachers, you don't want to just kind of have a quick hour brush over of what they're supposed to do or half hour or whatever it is. You want to get them some professional development because that's going to give them the most effective practices. They're going to be able to kind of gauge, what they're supposed to do or how they can help out teachers more effectively if they're getting that professional development. And then your school culture has got to be one where you support each other. Otherwise, it's just another job duty, and it can be more difficult if you have a mentoring program, if you don't have a school culture that's set up to be cohesive.
I just want to chime in real quick. I mean, we don't have a lot of turnover year to year. We don't have a very big school, so we don't have a lot of turnover. You're kind of married to the district if you're here, but when we do have somebody turnover, it seems like for our mentoring program, we go to the same well over and over and over again. And you're going through things, I'm kind of reflecting on, hey, maybe I need to give somebody else a chance here because I'm running my good ones ragged.
If they know what they're doing though and they're good at it, then yeah, I don't see any issues with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it a little bit when I get to my objectives, but we do not have a formal mentoring program in Hartington, Newcastle. And this chapter kind of led me to think about developing one. But as Josh said, when I first started, we had an informal program and we picked the same people over and over. And I think that leads to some teacher burnout.
Yeah.
I think they know they're valued, and I think they know we respect their opinions, and we want them to be. But it's a lot of work to be a mentor, and so it's really hard not to go to the well over and over and over because you know
Well,
what you're going to.
that's the thing is the good ones care and they're gonna do a good job with it. And yeah, they can push them to the point of burnout a little bit sometimes because they care so much.
All right, my name's Corey Olderick. For those of you watching our group the first time, I'm the high school principal at Hartington, Newcastle. So I have objectives 4 and 5. Objective 4, talking about administrative leadership in induction. And the first part, just talking about the huge role that principals play. If you want to have a good mentorship program, and you guys have already talked about this, the one thing to make sure, if you want to ensure it's going to happen, you need to schedule time, space, maybe even materials, discussion questions, so that it happens. If you put it on a mentor and a mentee, teaching is hard and teaching is busy, and even it's easy to just push it off. We'll do it a different time, and pretty soon that happens a couple times, and you haven't met for a while. So it's really important that administration steps in and makes the mentorship program go well. One of the things the text noted was the biggest challenge they saw in mentorship was for an experienced veteran teacher to comment about another colleague's work. I have some firsthand experience with this when I taught in Humphrey. ESU 7 started, I don't know if a pilot program is the right word. It was the first time they had done it, though. We did learning walks, and um, teachers could volunteer, schools could volunteer. I think we had a group of 5 or 6 teachers, K-12, that volunteered to do it. Uh, the ESU came in, and basically what we did is we went in and watched other teachers teach. We focused on a certain part of maybe an instructional model, whether it was the opening or whether it was how students interacted with each other throughout class. We would go in and watch for anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. We would leave the classroom. We would talk as a group, and then we would bring that teacher out. And we had a lot of conversations just about what we had seen. We had questions. It was never, why did you do this? It was more like, hey, I noticed you did this. What's the reason you do that? And early on, those learning walks were really awkward. Veteran teachers didn't want to, I think they felt they were being critical. And so it was trying to create a sense of openness where you could just ask the questions and have the conversation. But um, a really big key about that part or that learning walk program was there was not an administrator involved. It was an ESU person that led us, and it's important when teachers do observe colleagues that you make sure that that's not evaluative in nature because it takes away a lot of stress for teachers to participate in that program because they feel more open to just say what they would like to say and share ideas versus feeling like that's going to go into an evaluation or they're being watched for whether or not they'll be in a job next year. Um, Induction can't be the end all though. Um, they were pretty straightforward in the text that you can have mentors and mentees, but principals are still a huge part of the success that teachers are going to have. You have to have professional development. Teachers need to have support, like you or from their administrator. Principals need to be involved. They need to help evaluate. They need to be someone that goes and asks, "Do you need something?" Because like you guys said, if you're on an island, especially early in teaching, it can be a very lonely, lonely place because you don't know where to go for support. And one of the last things they talked about was be careful when you choose your mentors because if you ask a poor teacher to do it, you could be giving them the approval that maybe the things they're doing are good. And, um, many of us, if we have a poor teacher, we're probably working with them. But just being very careful about who you do choose because you don't want to reinforce maybe bad habits or bad practices in the classroom. So you can go on to the next one, Josh. Some of the recommendations for principals, I think the first one's pretty obvious. When you have new teachers, don't give them too much to do. Um, it's really hard to teach. We know that, but the first year, there's a lot of learning that goes into it. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And A and B kind of go together, limit extra duties. So one of the things that we do at Hartington Newcastle, we will do everything we can when we hire a new teacher not to make them a head coach of any activity or sport. I mean, that doesn't always happen, but that's our goal. We really, really, really try to give them opportunities, maybe as an assistant if that's what they want. And we've even had situations where we hired somebody that we think wants to be a head coach, and we will kind of mentor them even in the sport early on, be an assistant for a few years with this veteran coach, and then we'll let you take it over. It just lets them get their instruction in the classroom handled first, which I think we all recognize is the most important thing. Maybe not always to the community. Sometimes, the outside things are more important, but in the building, we want to make sure they're ready to go. Um, the administrative evaluation has to be a learning experience. So you have to have feedback. So in evaluations, I try to evaluate new teachers. We have to evaluate twice a year. So early in the first semester, and I try to do it again early in the second semester. And when I evaluate new teachers, I tell them this is a conversation. Um, I'm never looking to get rid of a first year teacher unless there are just ethical or serious issues that have to be addressed. It's always a conversation, and I do everything I can to make sure that it's hard when you have a boss employee situation. No matter how many times you tell someone, I really want to have a conversation. I want to work with you. I think there's still a line sometimes that's really hard for teachers to, there's that line. And so you have to make it really clear, like, I want to work with you, and these are the things I want to do for you. We require our new teachers as part of we don't have a formal mentoring program, but ESU 1 offers a new teacher training. Um, they give really good resources to teachers so that they can network. And then they talk a lot about good classroom practices. Teacher ed programs are good, but there are things they just can't cover over the course of the college experience. And so that ESU program has been really good. And it gives them like a non-evaluative group to like share their experiences and then get like a safe setting response. So That's one of the things we require. The last part for principals, um, I think somebody mentioned this earlier when they talked about the overwhelmingness of what orient or induction can be like when they sit down and they read you a handbook and you can just see their heads are spinning. So one of the things they talk about is at the beginning of the year, sit down and plan out the topics that you want to talk about that are maybe most pressing. There are probably those things early in the year you need to go over that may not be as exciting or intense. But there are kind of seasons to teach. I think we all know that. Like state testing season, there might be, plan discussions for state testing maybe later in the year because you can go through all of that in a meeting at the beginning of the year. But what I found is when we did meet, we meet with teachers every year, new teachers at the beginning of the year. We bring them in a day early. We try to go over as much as we can, right? And so we did that. We would cover everything, just like you guys talked about. And it never failed. I'd be answering questions about the topics we talked about at the in-service within 2 or 3 weeks. They were overwhelmed. There was too much going on. And so now when we meet, I try to cover the things that are most important. And then I try to find new teachers throughout the year. Okay, we're getting ready for homecoming. I mean, that sounds like such a simple thing, but like, here's the procedures or the policies or how we do homecoming, just so you're ready for it. And then state testing comes along. We have those discussions. So try not to overwhelm your teachers early on because there's a lot going for them. You can go to the next one, Josh. So objective 5 talks about induction programs for administrators. And so traditionally, I think we all look at this book, I think, is written from a big school perspective more than maybe the Silver Lake, Hartington, Newcastle perspective, even maybe York. They talked about recruiting principals typically came from the AP ranks, right? We've got a great assistant principal. Let's bring to be the principal. That's now seen kind of as an outdated practice because what they're finding is APs get really good at the duties they're given, and then they move on to the principalship in that district, and they're doing a completely different job, and they're not prepared. So it's not necessarily, well, a great assistant principal will just move them up, and they're going to immediately be a great principal. So there was just discussion about that. There's also, I think letter B probably goes without saying if you're in administration, there are many teachers, even assistant principals, that see the principal job is strapped for time, bound by laws and policies, unreasonable demands, and underpaid. So what you're seeing more people go to is the grow your own administrator system. Um, and what they do is they'll give teachers time in their day where maybe they're just available to help with certain topics that you would deal with as a principal, whether that be mentoring a teacher, chairing maybe you're going to do a curriculum committee. You help with student discipline for a couple of weeks, uh, offer a professional development workshop, and then you can let teachers find out, like, is this something you really want to do? Is this something you're good at? Something that you aspire to do? And maybe you find out you're not, and then they move in a different direction. But um, recruiting from within is big in anything anymore. I mean, we're recruiting students to try to come back to be our teachers. Recruiting administrators is going to get hard too as we lose more and more teachers. So this grow your own teacher model is kind of an area you're seeing people go to. Um, Learning the job as an administrator. So administrators are really faced with two big issues. Principals, two big issues. They need to learn what's expected, and then they need to have technical skills. So the what's expected is teachers, parents, central office, you as a principal are going to be hit from a number of different angles um, on the same situation. And I'll tell you very, very frankly, the first couple of years I was a principal, if a situation came to me and the parent brought it to me, I was much more likely to be influenced by them because it got to me first, right? And not maybe always getting every other perspective, and then you start to form an opinion or a decision early on. Um, it's really, really, really important. And now this is year 10. When I get something that comes to my office that could be controversial, needs to be dealt with, just might need more input, I tell people I'll listen to what you have to say, but then I need to go have more conversation because it's easy to be influenced early on, and you are kind of a middleman between the superintendent above you, the teachers, the parents. You are working with a number of different parties who all have a different angle or spin on situations. Technical skills. So, as an administrator, you have to be the master of policies and contracts. You have to know law. Like that's just something you have to do. So, when things come to you, you have to be able to do them the way your district has said you will do it, the way the state has said you'll do that. Um, Most recurring problems get solved that way. However, when you have a mentor as a principal, um, it's it's better because I'm in a building and I don't know what Josh your situation is, but I'm in a building with an elementary principal and a superintendent. I feel like they're very good for me to go to when I have situations that I'm not sure how to handle. They're very helpful, but it's really important for me. I have high school principal friends, Croft and Wausau Pender, that are very close, and when I feel like I need something that's specific to my job, I call those people. They're not necessarily my mentors, but I feel like you have to have someone that you can reach out to ask those questions, because they just see things from the picture that you have. Where again, I respect my elementary principal and superintendent very much, but sometimes their perspective is different because they're not seeing it through my lens. So it's really important that you find those people that can help you with the job. The third part of this is the elements of